We're going to work on reviewing 12.1 and 12.2, the area and circumference of circles. So before we get started in practicing some of the problems, we need to remember what the formulas are. There's circumference of a circle, and there are two formulas we could use for circumference. If we are given the diameter, we use this formula here. And if we're given the radius, we use this formula. And then when we have area of a circle, we use the area equals pi r squared. So once you are able to identify what formula you are supposed to use, the rest is really pretty simple. It's just a lot of calculator usage at that point. So I'm going to go to number 1, find the circumference of each circle. So remember, our two formulas for circumference are 2 pi r or pi d. So number 1, we're given the radius. So we're going to use this formula. So I start off by writing my formula, c equals 2 pi r, and all I do is plug in. So c equals 2 times 3.14 times 2. My radius is 2. In my calculator, I gotta get my calculator. In my calculator, I'm gonna do 2 times 3.14 times 2, and I'm gonna get 12.56 inches. Now, on this problem, we are given the diameter. So I'm going to use c equals pi d. C equals 3.14 times 7. C equals 3.14 times 7. I get 21.98 feet. Okay, so I use this formula. So you need to make sure that you look to see if your question is giving you the radius or the diameter. Now, we're looking for the area. Area equals pi r squared. Notice that there's only one formula for area. So if you are not given the radius, you need to figure out what the radius is. For number 1, we are given that the radius is 2. A equals 3.14 times 2 to the power of 2. A equals, and in my calculator, now I know some of you are using your phones as calculators right now because maybe you don't have the calculators we use in school. So if you were to be doing that, you would be doing 3.14 times 2 times 2. Okay? If you have the scientific calculator, you could use your exponent button or the caret. So 3.14 times 2 is going to give me 12.56 inches squared. Okay? So now for this problem, number 2, I'm given the diameter. So the first thing I have to do is figure out my radius. So if my diameter is 7, my radius is going to be 3.5. So A equals 3.14 times 3.5 squared. And once again, if you don't have that scientific calculator, 3.14 times 3.5 times 3.5. So 3.14 times 3.5 times 3.5. I'm going to get 38. I don't know why I wrote that backwards. 0.465 feet squared. So area is always the unit of measurement squared, and then circumference is not. Okay? I did not ask for you to round in these problems. If your teacher does ask you to round, you need to do so appropriately. So today we're going to be working on 9-2, graphing quadratic functions in standard form, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So we talked about the look of a quadratic function. It looks like a U or an upside down U. We call it a parabola. So when we are graphing the parabola, we are trying to find our vertex, our highest point or our lowest point, right? So if our parabola was like this, we'd be looking for our max. But if our parabola was like this, we would be looking for our min. That would be our lowest point. So what we do when we're looking for our vertex is this formula, x equals the opposite of b over 2a. You substitute your x value in the equation to solve for the y of the vertex. So you pick out your numbers to figure out your x. Once you get your x value, you plug your x back in, and then you get your y. Then from that point, you are going to have a point that is your highest or lowest point of your parabola. After you do that, you choose two values smaller than the x and two values larger than the x, creating your rainbow of symmetry. So you substitute your x values in the equation and solve for y. Here is an example. This is my equation, y equals x squared minus 6x plus 2. Okay, I really think it's very important to figure out what your a, your b, and your c are. Here, my a is 1. My b is -6. And my c is 2. So the opposite of b, so it's the opposite of -6 over 2 times a, which is 1. So the opposite of -6 is 6 over 2, which equals 3. So that is my x value of my vertex. So that's my x equals. Now I plug my x value in to figure out what my y is. So my y equals 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 2. So I plugged 3 in for x in my equation. Put 3 here, put 3 here. So then you could calculate that. So 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 2. And I'm going to get -7. Okay. And then it said to do two numbers less than your x value and two numbers greater than. So since my x value is 3, I'm going to go 2 to the left and 2 to the right. I always love working with t-charts because all you have to do with each one of these x values is plug it back into your original equation to figure out your y. So 1 squared minus 6 times 1 plus 2 is -3. 2 squared minus 6 times 2, plus 2 is -6. Now I'm at 4, so I'm going to plug 4 back into my equation. So 4 squared minus 6 times 4 plus 2 is -6. And then 5 squared minus 6 times 5 plus 2 is -3. When I talk about having a rainbow of symmetry, once you have your vertex, this is my vertex point, your y values should match up. So my 3, -7, 3, -7, 2, -6, 4, -6. My points aren't really. 1, -3. And 5, -3. Okay, and then we have our parabola. So identify your vertex. You choose 2 values less than your x, 2 values greater than your x. Substitute them into your equation. And then you could get the output, your y values, so you could get your ordered pairs. And then you have your parabola from it. So we can do this on our graphing calculator. So if I was to graph this on a graphing calculator, these are our steps. Some of us have the TI-84, which is helpful. Then there's Desmos online. I think we've talked about that before in class. And then I just tried to find an app on my phone that was a good one. And Calculate 84 does look like it is a good graphing calculator app, and it is free of charge. So if you were to be in your graphing calculator, these are the steps that we take. So you go to your y equals, you type the equation in, then you press second trace, and then you type 3 or 4, depending if you're looking for your max or your min. It will say left bound. You move your cursor to the left of your vertex. You press enter. Then you scoot your cursor to the right of your vertex and you press enter. And then you move your cursor as close to the vertex as possible. And you press enter. And now you have your vertex. So once again, we are always looking for our rainbow of symmetry. So if you go to your second graph, you get the table feature. And then you could scroll up in the X column to get to where your vertex X value is. And then you'll be able to see your rainbow of symmetry. So you could choose your vertex and then your 2 points to the left and 2 points to the right.